Hey, well done. You have found us. The brand new barbecue podcast, low and slow American flavors with that Kiwi twist. This is Barbecue Base. I'm your host, Alex Lawson, captain of the esteemed Burnt Beginnings barbecue team. Hopefully to be more successful in the future, but we're getting there. Self-confessed Americophile. And the late, great chef Anthony Bourdain once said, barbecue may not be the road to world peace, but it's a start. And I think we really agree with that here. It's all about getting friends and colleagues together, sharing stories, experiences, hopefully cooking, eating some great food, which really leads me to introduce co-host for the show. And many of you will know him from social media, New Zealand's resident expert in all things backyard, meat aficionado, fireboard, and Heat Beads ambassador, Barbecue Jesus himself, Noel Hassapladakis. How's it going, Noel?
Thanks, Alex. That was quite an introduction. Yeah, look, absolutely stoked to be here and get this going. And look, just for all of the guys, if you want to get in touch with us or ask us any questions about the podcast, just go through the Facebook page, Meat Mafia Collective, or you can hit me through Insta as well, which is Meat Mafia Collective.
Cool. So we're super pumped to be bringing you this podcast now, and hopefully, you guys will keep listening, and we will cover lots of topics for you. We'll talk about events, competitions. We'll talk about recipes and tips and tricks. And every now and again we'll have some special guests, and we've got a really special guest today, which is Matt Melville, founder of the Rum and Q barbecue team, which recently, along with his lovely wife Tracy, branched out into rub sauces and on from there. So we thought, what better first guest to have on the show than Matt. So Matt, welcome. Thanks for being our first guest, and we hope you have a good time on the show today.
Thanks a lot, Alex. Afternoon, everybody. I think New Zealand barbecue needs things like this, where people can come together, talk about the scene, where it's come from, where it's headed, and some funny things that we've done along the way. I know the three gentlemen sitting in this room today have also had their fair share of funny incidents around the barbecue, and I'm sure we'll continue to have some more.
I'm sure we'll be getting into those. So, guys, what have we been up to this week? Seems we're running into the first show. Noel, any cooks? What's been on the grates?
Yeah, so just at the weekend, I got to use the Munbro smoker, which is basically a 250-gallon propane tank offset pit, which has got an insulated firebox, so that super efficient.
Beast.
It is a beast, and look, to be honest with you, there's only so much, meat that you can cook for yourself. So I ended up cooking a whole load of stuff for friends. That pretty much covered every protein: brisket, pork butt, ribs, chicken. Even did a few pastrami's as well. So
that's a whole farm. That's not just cooking a barbecue. That's a farmyard.
Yeah, a few animals gave up their lives for that one. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I heard you had vegan protesters on the pavement while
that's
you're doing
quite regular in my house. Yeah.
I've been getting into the tomahawks this week. I had some family over from overseas, so they wanted to see something, and of course they wanted to see something done, but it doesn't take more than about an hour, so there was no 8-hour cooks for me.
Yep.
So a few tomahawks on the Weber, which was really good fun, and I may have used a little bull dust on those from our esteemed guests line.
Sleepers getting used there, yep.
They are. So
taking notes.
Yeah, I've been active, even though I'm on a little bit of a downturn on the comp scene. I've got to wait until April, but I know, Matt, you're off to Wellington this week, correct?
We do, yeah. We've got Brewtown on Friday night and Saturday. I'm actually a little bit privileged because I'll be flying up from Christchurch on the Friday afternoon, so I don't have to make the drive down. My lovely wife's going to do that for me.
Should be in a fine mood by the time you get there.
Yeah. I'll make sure I come with a couple of extra ciders for her. So yeah, I'll get in there about Friday lunchtime, and then the comp starts. I think the cooking window opens about 6 o'clock. We'll cook through the night and turn in Saturday.
Awesome. Well, we'll catch up with that on the next show. So, look, what's coming up today? We obviously, unless you were hiding under the proverbial barbecue rock, you'd have known that Meat Stock happened in the last few weeks, and we were at Meat Stock in various capacities. So we've got a little bit of highlights from that and what we thought. We're obviously going to talk a bit more in depth with Matt here about Rum and Q and the New Zealand scene and everything that was going on there. We are going to be bringing you the first ever New Zealand Fire Dragon Chili Challenge, interview challenge, which if you've ever seen Hot Ones, we're pretty uncreative, so we've just ripped that off basically completely. And we're skipping all the mild stuff and we're going straight to the heat.
Oh, excellent.
So I'm pretty
Dragon's
sure
Fury.
we're all going to be ruined. And tomorrow we may be adding to the toilet paper scarcity crisis after this.
I didn't think about that.
Mate, it could be brutal. I hope you've stocked up. So we'll be doing that later as well. And we'll also be launching the wonderfully titled Noel's Meat section, which unfortunately for the ladies out there isn't Noel playing with a certain part of his anatomy. He's actually talking about cooking meat. So yeah, unfortunately,
You just disappointed Matt there.
Disappointed Matt.
I'm
Probably. But, we'll roll on there. I disappoint Matt regularly. So that's what's coming up. We hope you like the rest of the show, and we're going to get stuck in now and talk a little bit about Meat Stock. Meat Stock a few weeks ago held in Auckland, and Matt and I were both there as competitors, and Noel was there doing a load of demos. And for those of you, I guess, who've never been to Meat Stock and don't really know what it's about, it's a show that's been around for, Matt, for 3 years now in New Zealand?
We had our fourth
show this year.
Yeah.
Takes place at Green Lane in Auckland. It's a massive show with about 8,000 people coming through each day. And really, it's pretty much what it sounds like. Meat Stock. It's a lot of meat is cooked, and you can buy and try stuff from vendors. There's barbecue competitions, lots of demos. Some of the best barbecue pitmasters from the world come down. So this year, Big Mo Cason, Diva Q, Mitch Benjamin. I'm probably forgetting somebody, but really
Paulie as well.
Paul Patterson was with Mitch Benjamin, and music, beers. It's just a bloody good day out, really, isn't it?
Yep.
It really is, yeah. I mean, there's also the Butcher Wars as well.
That's
the
right, I knew I'd
Barber
forget
Wars,
that.
which was pretty cool. A lot of people don't take the time to go and have a look at those, but if you do go and have a browse, it's pretty awesome what they do. I think some of the meat setups there as well were pretty awesome. The Jack Daniels had that carousel, which was cooking whole hogs and short ribs and all sorts, and then there was the digger that had the hanging tomahawks, which
That
was
looks so
probably
awesome.
the highlight for me.
That was
That
particularly
looks so
impressive.
good.
Yeah.
It was a big thing. So we'll come back. We'll talk about what it's like to, top tips as a punter and all that kind of stuff. But we did capture a little bit of audio and a few interviews as we were going around. So let's hear from some of the characters of Meat Stock. Bumped into Jay Beaumont, who is the man behind all the Meat Stocks.
The reason why I started into barbecue is because I tried to cook it at home and couldn't. I think I know what I'm doing, but 3 months ago I probably dumped the best part of $200 on 3 steaks just to buy them, big tomahawk steaks, and I forgot they're in the pellet cooker. And they were well done before I'd even had a chance to sear them.
Possibly the worst thing any of us can do is well done on a steak, isn't it?
I know, and I had to serve them to friends, and it was embarrassing. They still tasted great, but yeah, I well and truly messed that up.
And we are with Josh and Rocco, come all the way down from Whangarei. Has there always been successful cooks?
I would say no. You got to learn, eh?
First cooker was just a bit of pipe with a bit of plate on the end and chuck a bit of chicken on some charcoal and see what happens.
And did it come out all right?
Sometimes you had to wait 4 or 5 hours, but
Well, I think that's the pitmaster way. You get some really colourful characters around, and probably none more colourful than these 3 fine ladies who I've just met, who are in full carnival outfits.
Well, we are the Brazilian Divas. We do performances around New Zealand. And we are here because in Brazil, barbecue, samba, girls in bikinis, that's a common thing there. And Brazil is in full force now with carnival, giving a little taste.
We know that barbecue doesn't always go the smoothest in the world. Have you had any shockers?
I got one of those little cheap rotisserie
groceries from Bunnings, bought a nice big rolled pork and everything, and was doing the business, and we pulled it off. And being a meathead newbie with the rotisserie, I'd not put the coal out to the ends far enough. And so we were basically raw on the ends and cooked in the middle.
Matt Grace from Urban Lumberjack.
Yeah, we started in April last year, so born out of just my passion for chopping wood. I had too much in the driveway and had to figure out what I did with it, or else face catastrophic results with my marriage. So, yeah.
Well, what's been the highlight?
There's $1 gazillion worth of meat. Tomahawks hanging from a digger. And the theatre in there, I just love that, you know. So seeing that is just awesome.
Craig, Matt and Gavin, who have come to Meatstock for a little bit of a different reason than most. Why are you here at Meatstock, Matt?
I'm getting married in a week, so this is the starter for 10 for an afternoon and evening of probably lots of drink.
Meat.
You might be swapping more of the beers this afternoon for steaks and churrasco and all that kind of stuff.
I'm hoping there's not too much sausage involved.
So there was a little flavour of Meatstock. I think for the listeners today, though, before we talk a little comp stuff, if you're a punter going to Meatstock, 'cause that's how many people get into barbecue even, they sell a lot of barbecues there. What are our tips and tricks for surviving Meatstock?
I think the key thing is get there early, because everyone seems to turn up at lunchtime to eat. So if you actually get in and treat it as brunch rather than lunch, you'll actually get, your selection of food from all the stands, and you'll have a much better time.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. There are certainly lots of queues, and you got to manage the time. What about Matt? What about money? Like, how much money do we take?
Well, to be quite honest with you, mate, I've only ever been to Meatstock as a competitor. So we've been barbecuing 4 years now. But what I can tell you is the weather is always super hot. I think for the first time in 4 years, we had some rain on the Sunday morning. But every other year, we've had just extreme heat, and on top of the black asphalt, the radiant heat's huge. So I would wear as little as possible for all the women out there. Keep hydrated. I mean, if a spontaneous water fights break out, that's probably the best thing that could happen. And yeah, I mean, just get really trolleyed. I mean, that beer that Joe makes, I mean, he doesn't fuck around really. I mean, it's 5% above, so I would suggest everybody enjoy that to the maximum, and just basically throw water around.
I think we certainly see I saw quite a few people who'd enjoyed it to the maximum, probably in the competition zone as well as the general punters. I don't think we're in any.
It's a very tough balancing act to get the barbecue and the beer right.
Any danger of that?
I haven't quite cracked it yet.
No, 4 years on, we still haven't got that balance right.
So look, the big winners from this year's Meatstock were Reserve Grand Champion, or RGC, for the Aussie Pit Boys. So Trevor once again came over and stole loads of our silverware.
Stole a trophy,
you bastard, Trevor. And but the big winner, Brendan Reismer from Smoking Meat House, took out GC.
It's a great win.
I think we can probably all agree that he deserves that trophy. He is a GC as well as being a GC at that. So.
And you know what? That was the first time I've seen a comp, a GC winner take it without taking any categories. So he was that consistent. He was top 10 for all of his hand-ins. It was a great effort,
Yeah, and how did Rummikub get on, Matt?
Yeah, it was good, mate. For the first time, I think it was the first time New Zealand's had it. Is that live pit boss? So we were one of the 4 teams to be asked to compete in front of the crowd. It did detract a little bit from, if I'm honest. I mean, there was a little bit more anxiety going into this comp, but it was good. It was good for the team to get out there and talk to the crowd, which we were given loads of opportunity to do. So we had a good time.
You're so shy, Matt, normally, though.
Yeah, I just, when I see a microphone, I normally run the other way. But, I think first and foremost, it gave Jared a really good insight to what his competition was doing. There's some good terminology getting around the barbecue scene, and shigging is it's kind of a weird word to say, but I think we've got one man that masters that beautifully. Jared shigged the hell out of us, barbecue war, and continues to be very competitive. I mean, that man has been inside some very good tents, and he's seen some very cool stuff.
So maybe if you can explain exactly what shigging means, because I think many of us have got images of steamy back windows and car parks going on, and I'm pretty sure it's not that, or I'm hoping it's not, considering I know Jared McDonald quite well, and it's the last thing I want to picture as well, I'm afraid, with J-Mac. But what's shigging, Matt?
Well, shigging is basically when you go around, you're a little bit sneaky about things. You might be there under another guise to maybe borrow a cup of sugar or grab a beer or even return a beer. But generally, you're just taking notes. You're taking those little mental pictures the whole way around, and you take that back to your camp, and you basically, you enjoy the little wares that you've just stolen off another team.
Oh, well, something maybe I'm going to have to start shigging a bit more to improve our scores. So my team got a 7th in lamb, which we were super ecstatic with until Matt trumped us and took out the lamb category, which always has to get one up on the teams he sponsors. But so they took 1st and we took 7th in that category, but we were very happy with that, I have to say.
Yeah,
very good result.
Very competitive field, mate.
52 or 53 teams. So top 10 anything is great.
One of our best results, I thought. Yeah. And something they did a little bit different this year, they had the pork rib throwdown. So they brought in, the competitive eating, like the hot dog guys and all that kind of stuff. And I was lucky I managed to catch up with the head of the Competitive Eating Association for Australia, colourful character Billy Boyd. So let's have a little listen to that. All right, well, I've run into a very interesting character here at Meat Stock, Mr. Billy Boyd from Australia. So, Billy, why are you over here?
I'm over here to run the Meat Stock Rib Throwdown in New Zealand. So, very excited to be here. It's the first time we've been in New Zealand, so we've come over the ditch, and we're here to bring some eaters and compete against you guys.
So, how exactly is the Rib Throwdown going to work? So, is it New Zealand versus Australia, or is it a free-for-all? Like, can anybody turn up and do it?
It is somewhat a bit of a Australia versus New Zealand thing, but from a prize perspective, anyone can win it. So it's not like a team event. It is an individual event, but we've flown three eaters over here this year, and they're going to compete for a $1,000 first place prize in the professional division, and the runner-up gets $500. So it'll be a pretty hotly contested event.
And so if you're one of the competitors, how many ribs are you expected to eat to be in with a chance, and in what sort of time?
Okay, so tomorrow's format for the professional division is going to be 2 kilos net weight of rib meat and 3 minutes to do it. So it's whoever eats that 2 kilos first, or whoever eats the most in that 3-minute period.
How many ribs do you have to cook for a pork rib-off throwdown?
So we've got 10 competitors in the professional division. They get 2 kilos of rib meat. So this is not, doesn't include bones, right? So I've still got to go and work that out. So I've got to drop some ribs today, strip out the bones, work out the weights, calculate it all, and then on the day we'll weigh it all up and plate it and just let them go ham, so to speak.
But still a fair amount of racks of ribs going down at some point early tomorrow morning to be ready for the throwdown tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe there is 120 racks that we've got. So, but that's going to be for the pro and the amateur division as well. So, we'll be spreading around, but that's a lot of ribs. So it's a lot of cooking. So that's part of my job today, is just to get all that lined up for tomorrow.
And how long's the competitive eating been around in Australia? Because it's a pretty new thing over here, I think.
We've been around for about 10 years now. We're really excited to be here. In terms of Australian eaters, there's always new eaters coming in. It's pretty hard to dislodge the guys up the top. They're very competitive and very good at what they do. The end game here is to get New Zealanders interested in competitive eating as well. We'd love to have a competitive eating league over here. Get some of you guys who I know are big eaters. Like, we know Kiwis can put the food away. So, the sky's the limit over here.
I think you only have to look around and see some of the physiques wandering around to know that. But if I was looking to get into competitive eating, what would be my training regime? What do I have to put in to be ready for a comp?
I mean, if you're fresh, if you've never really done competitive eating before, what we tend to recommend is go to restaurants. Plenty of restaurants around the place have challenges. Just test your capacity and what you can put away, and then just build on there. Like the number one eater in Australia, Hog Smash Food. The first time he got into competitive eating, he was really surprised that he he could do what he did. And then he entered some comps, and then next thing you know, he's ranked number 1 in Australia. So, look, everyone's got to start somewhere. Not everyone's going to be, Hulk Smash Food or Joey Chestnut right off the bat. Just enjoy.
What's the inside track on a little trip?
Oh, look, it's hard to say. The only reason I say that is because there's usually 2 types of eaters. There's capacity and then there's speed. So people are good at one, and people are better at the other. So top tip, enjoy food. Enjoy lots of it.
Are you a barbecuer at home?
Yeah, ribs are my game. I love ribs. I do love barbecue. I do love meat stock. It's a great event. Good to see that barbecue is like this big family. It's just great.
We all know that barbecue doesn't often run as smoothly as we would have liked.
No.
Yeah, you had any times where you've been on the pizza delivery line or anything that's gone...
Fortunately not. And look, to be fair, I haven't done... I'm nowhere near like comp barbecue or anything like that. I deal with it. Like if it doesn't go quite right, whatever. If all was lost and people were screaming at me, it probably would be a pick up the phone to Domino's or meet back here tomorrow when it's ready.
All right, we're looking forward to seeing the rib throwdown tomorrow, so we wish you luck for that and hope to see the success of competitive eating over in New Zealand.
Thanks very much. Yeah, looking forward to it, and I hope to see everyone there.
So I think we can all agree, like, meat stock's definitely worth going to, right, guys? It's,
absolutely.
100%.
Best 2 days of the year for me.
It should be penciled into your calendar. It happens on the second weekend of February each year, so no excuses for not knowing when it is. And I think my top tip actually is to get your tickets early, because this thing, the Saturday always sells out, and most people want to go on the Saturday. Sunday's great too. Like, you get pretty much all the same stuff, but obviously you've got to go to work the next day, so you have to moderate.
I think
your
if
beer
you've got
intake.
if you've got a young family, and you want to take the whole family along, Sunday's your day.
Yeah,
if you're going with a bunch of mates, Saturday's your day.
And if you want to go Saturday, get your tickets early. They normally go on sale around sort of October, November, so plenty of time to get them. And it really is a great event that we look forward to. Right, we're going to roll on. So we have Matt Melville in the studio. Welcome, Matt.
Oh, thanks, mate.
So for the guys at home, you run and founded the Rum and Q competition team, which is now branched out into rubs and sauces. But how did you first get into barbecue? Way before comps or anything like that. Why did you get into smoking?
Into smoking or into... I mean, I've always loved food, right? So it doesn't matter if I'm eating at someone's house or people are coming to my house, up until, well, pretty much all the time, I've always kind of led that cook. So I've always enjoyed food. 4 years ago, I bought my first smoker. Well, in fact, I built my first smoker. I had a mate here in Auckland, and he'd gone to some winery and he had a wine barrel. He had some salmon out of a wine barrel. So he came home and he made his own smoker. And, we may have boiled some ribs, and we may have put some cheap barbecue sauce on it, and we may have chucked it in his wine barrel. At this point, it was just... a little gas burner, and then on top we had a little charcoal thing, cast iron charcoal thing with some chips in it, and that's how it started for me. So I went home, grabbed a wine barrel. Didn't make sense of putting a fire inside a wooden thing, but I persevered. I did screw every stave to another band that I put around because I knew they would shrink. But it still fell to bits. I managed to patch it up and flog it on Trade Me for just about what I paid for it. So so it was good. It was good.
Say, I never met the barrel. I didn't know that story.
No, I mean, it did look good. It lived on the deck, but it was, it was seasonal, and it was 4 shades of shit right through the year. It was either really dry or it was just a bit gapey and a bit holy. So. It didn't really last that long. But
I think there's many who'd say they started with a wine barrel. That's a pretty ambitious build to start off with. I've only seen the wine barrel once on another competition team at Napier had a wine barrel.
Oh, that's Mo Ob.
Yeah,
is that right? Yeah.
Smoked his brisket in it.
Oh, yeah.
But, that was the first time I've seen one in the flesh as well.
Yeah, and look, I was pretty fortunate because we had a shop just around the corner in Albany, Hall-End, and they actually... they gave me a smoker because I wanted a Kamado Joe. My cousin's husband has a Kamado Joe, and I thought, right, I need to go and get some good kit. So I went down to Albany and just sort of inquired because they had them on their website, but they had actually begun making their own. So she said, look, back your truck up, take one of these home, and give it a go, and let me know how you find it. So that pretty much was the first sponsorship for us. For the first meat stock, she gave us 2 of those standard ones and 2 large ones. So we had some pretty good kit straight off the bat.
And so you just talked about going to your first meat stock. Like, why did you decide? How did you decide, and how did you get the sign off? Probably more likely from the
wife, from
the wife, to start a competition barbecue team. Because I've started one. Noel's been in your first one, and it's not the easiest thing to get a sign off for once they actually work out how much money you're intending on spending on something and how much time you're intending on spending on it. Like,
I think everyone's met Tracy. I mean, there's a lot of barbecue community out there, and I think they'll all agree with me. She's very patient. She's a very understanding woman.
Yes, she is.
So yeah, I mean, it was my cousin's husband that rang me one day and said, "Look, meat stock's coming to Auckland for the first time. How about we join a team?" I said, "Yep, that's no worries." So I just basically worked out all the timings for the meet. It was all a bit of a solo thing. I had 2 guys coming from Sydney, guy I used to go to school with, and my cousin's husband. So it was a bit weird having a team that lived on opposite side of the Tasman, but I did most of the timings and I got all the gear together. We had the barbecue sponsored, so that was pretty good. And then we just formed it. And we did okay, I think. Back in those days, there wasn't a huge competition there. It was just making that 10-minute window and making it look a little bit edible. So we ended up getting...
I judged that comp, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
That was my first experience of competition judging,
yeah. We did okay. I think we might have got 5th or 8th or something like that. So
how many teams entered in that first year? How many can you remember?
I think there was 33 or 35
so it's still
teams.
A pretty good...
It was a really good show for the first time, yeah. And we were actually neighbours with Jared, and that's when I first met Jared. And I kept him up all night with my Makita radio.
Jared McDonald from More Better Barbecue and Texas
some
Pizza
really
in
good
Hamilton.
there. Yeah.
If you're in Hamilton needing a feed, Jared, get along to see Jared at Texas Pizza.
Yeah, good plug, that one.
We'll give him a plug.
Yeah. He deserves it.
He deserves it. And so what was it like? Tell us about the comp scene then. Like, what was it like compared to now?
I think there was a lot of people walking around that first comp, just kind of making sure everyone's on the 3-2-1 method for ribs, which we all know doesn't work. Everyone was indeed cooking brisket. Was their sauce red enough and shiny enough? I think it would have been nice to see what those boxes were like, if there was a lot of difference or we're all making the same sort of, not mistakes, but same decisions, I guess.
I think the main difference with the comp scene back then to now is that a lot of people cooked for their tastes and for themselves, whereas I think the comp scene now has realised that you're actually cooking for multiple judges that you don't want to offend, right? So, yeah, I think that was a major difference for me. It's quite sophisticated now. That's
a really good point, because people did come into that comp with some Asian flavours. I mean, I would have gone the Asian flavour as well, because I personally love it, but we abstained and just went the sugary sweet heat stuff.
We had sesame seeds on some lollipop chicken.
Well done, Daz.
I wasn't going to say that, but yeah, so since you mentioned it.
But quite a few of the teams started at the same time, right? I mean, you've had some of those teams still around today. Were people like Barbecue War and obviously yourselves, the Smoking Hot Rocks, with Dazza. Yep. Like, there are quite a few teams still going now.
Yep. That's right. I think there's probably, there must be about 10 teams from 4 years ago that are
still going.
Yeah.
Did people know any of those guys? Like, were you guys friends before?
No.
Like, it was all...
And that's a beautiful thing about this community, right? You've got all walks of life thrown together for 2 nights.
In a car park.
And generally we've been pretty well behaved, which is the amazing thing. And not only well behaved, but there's been a lot of love in that community. That's probably been the biggest thing. And I guess, you kind of think, shit, when's that going to end? But it doesn't seem to end. I think there's just more people joining this scene now, and bringing all sorts of parts of parts of the world with them, and I think it's really, really cool, actually.
And I think, I've been in the barbecue scene, as it were, for probably just over 2 years, but in the competition scene since last season. So last season was my first season, and it seems to be like, on the whole, we have a no dickheads rule, which is an unspoken rule, but especially compared to what you see maybe in some of the Australian pages or the US pages, everybody's, even if something's blatantly, put up on a page and you just go, oh my God, your poor guests having to eat that. It's not, they don't get slayed for it. They get constructive. Oh, you might want to try
do this a bit
bit less of
differently.
this. And I think it's a real benefit to that community. And as you say, like, there are people from every single walk of life on that, people who can't afford a $40 brisket and people who are cooking $300-400 briskets. And there's no one-upmanship or anything like that in general.
No, it's a very, very solid scene, and I think you've instantly got a lot of brothers and sisters out there that'll give you a hand, if you put the call out.
So if you could go back to the beginning, you're starting Rum and Q again, what tips would you give to new teams in terms of how would you do things differently to what you've done so far?
I don't know if I do too much different. I mean, the first thing I did was I secured the barbecues and I made sure I knew how to cook on those barbecues. So whatever you're going to bring to comp, make sure you're confident with. Right? That's the rule.
100%.
Don't pull anything new out of the bag at a comp.
Hold on, mate, I'm just taking notes. Don't pull anything.
You got to get your timings down. You got to know how long to rest meat for. What meat will rest out. We know chicken won't. We know ribs will to a point, but those bigger cuts like pork and beef will definitely rest. So you've got to get the timings right, and you've got to have a team. And I think every team will go through this at some point. They'll have arguments. They'll split. They'll form their own teams, which is fine. But I think you've got to see that from the early days and just go, right, we need one captain, and you've got to share the proteins, or you're going to run under one captain who oversees everything. There's lots of teams out there. They've got four team members, and each of them look after a protein. So, there's different ways to skin a cat, but as long as everybody agrees going in, then it should be okay.
And I think you've got to agree on why you're doing this as individuals in a team as well, because there are some teams who are very serious. They're here to win the competition. They're here to do all that stuff, and that's the absolute primary reason, and nothing else is going to come into it. Then you have probably the majority of teams who are, hey, we're here to compete. We also want to have a bit of a good time as well around the fringes. And then you've actually got some teams who are like, hey, we don't care that this is basically camping with our mates for the weekend, and on the side, we've got to hand some boxes in at some point, but our main priority is having a good time, and we don't really care where we come. And I think all of those approaches are 100% valid as long as you have full buy-in.
Absolutely.
From everybody, because you're all paying for, or whoever's paying for it,
exactly
basically.
Right. Yeah. One of those comps, it could cost the team anywhere up to $1,500, depending on how much of a good time they want to have.
Exactly. And costs are a big part of it, right? So competition costs are a really big part. And so how did you guys go around getting sponsorships, which is often what you see. New teams come in and the first thing they ask is how to get sponsorship rather than how do I do this? Like, how do I get sponsorship? Because, we're all trying to bring the costs down, right? How did you get the sponsorships for Rum and Q?
We were really fortunate. It was a brand new scene, so people weren't quite sure if it was just a bit of a flash in the pan or if it was going to be around for a while. But we were quite fortunate. I mean, Noel was there. You joined in the second year, I think.
Second comp, yeah.
Yeah, so we'd already had a meat sponsor, and Noel knew Ruben. He managed to get us in touch with Ruben, and you also knew Joe.
Ruben from the Aussie Butcher,
from the Aussie Butcher.
Yeah, and knew Joe from Liberty as well, so that was an easy conversation.
So those two guys have been with us a long time. Heat Beads have taken us on from number one, from the first comp. I think we're the first team. So it was just a matter of asking those guys, hey, is there any benefit in us repping your brand a little bit while we're out having fun? And hopefully you can see some value in that.
Because with the meat and the fuel sorted, I mean, that probably takes out, if I mental arithmetic, it's about half the entire cost of a comp, which
100%, mate.
can be a really big boon.
That meat can be, $500 plus. So it's a really...
Or more,
yeah. Yeah, it's a really good sponsorship. And, Ruben's a really good bugger for putting up with us. I mean, not only do the orders go in, but there's some pretty specific things that go in those emails as well. So he's a pretty patient man to put up with all that.
So in the last probably year and a half or so, you guys have branched out and released your rub range and followed in the last year with the two sauces, the meat juice and the slap it on. Like what was the point where you went, hey, we can turn this into, we can actually produce a product and start selling it versus we've got a rub that we like to use in competition or whatever?
Well, I will confess that I probably don't know too much about the international brands, the American rubs. I've never really used them to great extent. From day one at Meatstock, I had the soft cock on board. I had some sort of a bull dust on board. I can't remember what I used for lamb, but I know that we've basically had our own stuff from day one. And it was just a matter of, using those things and finally getting some call-ups. And then I think when we started, doing well consistently, I thought, well, maybe we can commercialise this. Maybe other people want to use it. So 18 months ago, we bagged them up, and we've been growing since. So last October, we did meat juice for the first time. We've now produced 4.5 tonne of that since October. So sales are going well there. And as you say, more recently, we released the mustard sauce, which I just love that sauce. So, we've used it on our home barbecues for quite some time. So, it was easy for us to do that.
And for those that just see a product pop up on a shelf, roughly how long do you think it took you to develop, soft cock, meat juice, Carolina mustard?
Well, if we've been competing for 4 years, it's probably taken 2.5 to 3 years to get those rubs on board. And then the meat juice took some development, might have taken about 6 or 8 months to develop, just quietly in the background there. And that mustard sauce we've been making for probably 18 months as well. Yeah.
And so, have there been any moments where you just looked around and put your head in your hands and gone, oh my God, what have I done?
Oh, mate. We've only just gone to a printed bag. So every other bag had a sticker on the front, sticker on the back.
Date sticker, address sticker.
Date sticker. And then the address sticker, that was pointed out to me that I didn't have an address line on there. So, all those stickers are applied by myself and my wife. You get home, we've got 2 young kids, 5 and 3. Get those little guys fed and showered and into bed. And then the stickers start, So it's been some long nights. And even now, not that this is a problem, it's a good problem to have, but the orders still have to get filled of a night time from us as well.
If I could offer some business advice, I mean, you probably missed a little bit of a trick there, because small hands are very nimble in sticking, and you put 2 of your best workers to bed every night before, and then you did the work. I would suggest maybe you could take some business consulting, and you had a ready to go production line just there.
I don't know if you've seen my boy play with stickers, but most of them end up on his face. We would have 2 dead children. We'd have 2 dead children on the lounge room floor, couldn't breathe because there was soft cock over their face.
Nick, do we maybe Nick, producer Nick, do we need to edit that last statement out? Or maybe we'll just leave it in. I'm not sure.
We can just
see how we go from there.
Slightly dangerous terminology, but what does the future hold for you, Matt? What's the next in the pipeline, or Project X that you can't tell us about yet?
We've got some new stuff coming out this year. We'll probably release our first product, our not a consumable product, but something that you can use on the barbecue. And I've got a few more sauces to go. We're just looking at that comp scene now. We're just, 2 young kids. We've only got 1 set of hands really to give us a hand with the babysitting. So we'll just have a look at that comp scene and see how many we can do, or if we look at a different sort of avenue, for Rum and Q.
Cool. Well, before we let you go, we are going to launch our Fire Dragon Chili interview. So we've got 10 questions.
I can't wait for this.
Let's get stuck into that. We have got in front of us the Dragon's Fury from Fire Dragon Chilies, which is a New Zealand owned chili sauce operation. Great guys. Clint from Fire Dragon, and this has come to us via Ken at BBQ BOI, or Barbecue Boy.
He's got a beautiful beard.
He's got a
beautiful man with a beautiful beard, but he has kindly sent us this. So this sauce, it won a gold medal in the ultra hot section of a very good competition, and has been described as insane heat with 10 3+ after it. So we're bringing Nick into this as well. Producer Nick. Nick's going to try the fire. You've not tried this before, have you, Nick?
I'm not going to have a good time. I'm just going to set it right now.
I think it'll be okay, and hopefully we can add to the stockpiling of toilet paper, but we'll see how that goes. So we've each got a cracker in front of us.
Mine's got a little bit more juice on it than
but only very small amount, Matt. More. We're going to eat these, and then we've got 10 quick fire questions. So bottoms up, boys. Cheers.
Cheers. See you on the other side.
See you on the other side.
All right, in it goes.
In it goes.
That crunchy. That crunchy. Nick's in trouble
already.
Nick's already gone down. Man down.
Just immediately on the tip of the tongue. Oh my.
Are you okay, Nick?
Maybe we should ask him questions.
Does anybody know how to operate a podcast deck? We've lost a producer.
Oh, he's struggling. Yeah.
It's building.
I'm fine.
Front of house.
We got front of house happening.
Front
at
of
the
house.
moment.
Definitely got front of house.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's burning. It's starting to burn. So I'm gonna. Okay.
Yeah.
The fire dragon chili. Matt, what's your favourite type of barbecue to cook on, and why?
I love my stretch. It just looks
Stretch
after
by
itself.
ProQ.
Stretch by ProQ. It looks after itself. It's it's a drinking man's barbecue, really. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Holy.
And what's your favourite cut of meat to cook and eat, and why?
I love the shorties. I love short rib.
Shorties are great.
Shorties are, we talked about a nice looking piece of meat before with the standing rib roast.
It's just a hot breath at the moment. I just can't feel my breath.
But those shorties give you that nice teethy look, and it's just beautiful gelatinous meat.
Jesus, I'm struggling badly now. I'm going to try and answer a question. Hold on.
3.
Oh, this is probably a pretty easy question for me to answer. What's your biggest fail to date? Mine's eating this goddamn chili. I'll tell you that right now.
I think the wine barrel thing, the whole misadventure with the wine barrel was probably the biggest. Are we talking barbecue or just in life in general?
Either. Feel free.
Bigger ones than those.
Whatever way you want.
Yeah, no, it was definitely the wine barrel.
Matt, you are surprisingly unaffected by
I'm
this
actually
chili.
okay by this, yeah.
You know, if I look at myself...
Eyes are gone, nose is gone.
I'm starting to sweat. I literally, my tongue is swelling up in my mouth. I would be the worst chili eating competition person ever. Noel, you're doing okay.
I'm all right.
You're all right?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Slight sheen developing on the forehead, I suspect, though. Or maybe a little
I'm like the Pavarotti of barbecue, mate, so I'm always sweating.
That's exactly what you are.
All right.
Okay, so fat side up or fat side down with brisket?
Depends where the fire's coming from.
Exactly. Fire's coming from my mouth and soon to be coming from my arse, I believe, Matt, on this one.
So that would be up and down in your case.
Yeah. All right. Strangest thing you've ever eaten? With you, this could be a question I'm
slightly
about to be horrified for the answer.
Strangest thing I've ever eaten, well, this is the only time I've eaten this, was in Morocco, and I had some pigeon. Would that be the strangest thing? I'm not sure, but it's the only time I've had pigeon. So, if I enjoyed that, I probably would have seeked it out a bit more, but probably pigeon.
Pigeon. It's something that probably
like
Noel and I have eaten quite a lot of.
Like an actual...
I don't know what colour it was before it was cooked, but it was pretty grey coming out.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Pretty weird.
I'm amazed that you are sat quite normally, even just talking, to be honest, because that's really hot stuff. Jesus.
I was almost going to say, let's have another one.
Matt,
maybe we should.
There we go.
Should we have another one?
Let's have another one.
Matt's going to have another one. It's not hot enough for Matt.
I'll have one with him.
I'm not going.
Can't leave him on his own.
I'm nowhere near another one at the moment.
I think this segment's all born around Struggle Street, so let's bring Struggle Street, shall we?
Let's bring Struggle Street. So, Matt, best barbecue that's not yours you've ever had?
Oh, best food.
No, yeah.
Barbecue food.
Best barbecue food you've ever. Who cooked it? Who did it? Where was it?
I'd have to say I used to love going down to fireworks down in Auckland Central there. It was a beautiful spot, full of beautiful people, namely Ants Franklin. For so many reasons, his barbecue was the best for me. I never used to order. I used to just walk in and give Ants a little wink and blow him a kiss, and he knew exactly what I wanted to eat.
Cheers, Matt.
Cheers, Noel.
The boys are going for
Cracker
number
going
2.
down.
Cracker 2, here we go.
I don't think we'll be joining them with number 2, will we?
You guys are braver than Nick and I. Completely braver than Nick and I. That's
No,
braver or
this one-
stupider. We're about to find out. We've got
This one's
4
gonna
more
hurt.
questions.
Right.
4 more questions to find out. Noel's looking positively uncomfortable, I'm going to say,
Yeah.
right
This
now.
this one's going to be a bit more
That's
uncomfortable.
found its mark.
Matt, I told he will tell you. I told him to dress up. He's wearing a pale blue shirt, business shirt,
Yeah.
which is soon to give away through sweat marks. I feel that he may not have actually should have taken the second cracker, but we'll find out. We'll find out. So, who did you learn most from starting out?
There was a lot of trial and error, mate. I mean, there was some YouTubing, there's no doubt. But back in the days, mate, all of us were fumbling through at the same rate. There wasn't a great deal on local pages for Kiwis. There was some pages coming out of Australia that I looked at. But I honestly, a lot of the learning was just done by trial and error.
Sorry, Matt. I just need to just wipe up some dribble that's just come out of my nose and my mouth at the moment because it is fire dragon.
Lives up
bloody
to its
hot.
name,
It's
lives up
living
to
up
its
to
name.
it. Clint, you've made one hell of a hot sauce here.
Mate, low and slow or hot and fast for you?
250 Fahrenheit, low and slow for me all day long.
Always, yeah.
Biggest legend in New Zealand barbecue.
I think you and I are sitting right either side of him.
Oh, give us a
Hey?
hug.
I did think that you might go that way. The old barbecue Jesus. He's looking a little bit less Jesus-y right now,
Mate,
though. I think
that last one was uncomfortable. You
There's
loaded that up a little bit too much, Alex. Yeah.
there's certainly a shine to the end of his nose. He's maybe more Santa Claus at the moment than drunken
A
Santa
little bit
Claus.
ruby red in the cheeks there.
I thought
Yeah,
he just
yeah.
come out of the orgy, didn't he?
Oh,
Now,
it's got a kick.
Top tip for a newbie barbecuer.
In terms of cooking or in terms of kit?
Let's say cooking.
Cooking? Just take your time. I mean, do some research, have a look. I mean, we're lucky enough to have people like Noel, and there's some other good buggers on the Pitmaster page that I think have a good affinity with explaining how to do stuff. I think just do what Luke Cini says. Use a search function. Search for that piece of meat that you're cooking, and just read what you can.
Right. I think before literally my seat is disintegrated with the acid and the heat that I'm emanating right now. That is the end of the first fight. We can all now have a drink.
Yeah.
Let's go on a water break, shall we?
A little water break, and we're going to get to Noel's meat of the week in a minute once my mouth has been extinguished.
Right. Section that Matt has basically come into the studio for. It's Noel's meat of the month.
Oh, mate. I hope it's slightly...
Excuse me.
I hope it's as hot as what we just had.
So, look, we're just going to talk about, I think, start gently, really, talk about a reverse seared standing rib roast today. So, generally, this is something I'll pull out if I've got a big crowd of friends or if I've got family coming over. You know, if you traditionally do roast beef, actually bin the oven and actually move your cut into the smoker.
It's a crowd pleaser, isn't it?
It
Noel?
really is a crowd pleaser. It looks spectacular on the plate.
It's a baby maker.
Baby maker, I like that. Tastes absolutely amazing. It's probably one of the easier cooks to do in barbecue if you're just starting out in charcoal. So typically I'm starting with the Weber running at about 275 degrees.
Is that Fahrenheit?
Fahrenheit, yes. Sorry, Matt. Very well pointed out. And essentially, I'll put a probe into the meat. So you're measuring the internal temp at the centre of the meat, and you rub the meat with, typically I would use Rum and Q Blackout, actually. I think that's probably one of my favourites on beef.
I'm not even paying you to say that.
I know, yeah, no, that's the go-to for steak for me.
Why do you like the Blackout? What's with the black, like, and let's talk about it in terms of charcoal-activated rubs, because there's Blackout, there's Grill Your Ass Off Gunpowder.
There's,
I'm sure, a few more. Hardcore Carnival Black, and they're quite popular, right? Like, what's the thing with the black rubs?
They are really popular. I think there's a fundamental difference between American rubs and New Zealand rubs. American rubs, I think, lean more towards grain-fed beef, so they tend to be a lot more salty and they tend to be a lot more deeper in flavour. Whereas I think New Zealand rubs are made for our meat, which is typically grass-fed. So yeah, I just tend to prefer the flavour profiles on the rubs that are made here.
And of course, they look cool because they're black. So
the reason for the black is to help build that bark. Now, sometimes it's not possible to get bark over cooks. You know, some of your cookers might be running a water bath. They mightn't be running a water bath, and depending on how you cook and the temperature you cook at, and for how long you cook, you may not get that bark that you need all the way through. So that black component just fills in the blanks, really. Yeah.
And you can get bark on short cooks like this one. You know, so this is, you know, maybe an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes for a standing rib roast, and you'll get a nice sort of bark on the outside of it. So when you cut your meat, you've got that red contrast. So quite spectacular to look at, as well as very tasty. So meat's rubbed, allow it to sweat on the side for probably 20 minutes into your pit. And you want to be cooking that until you get the internal temperature to about 120, which is on the rarer side. But essentially, you're then going to take the meat off and actually rest that for 15 minutes before you do anything else with it. Now, at this point, I'll spread the coals out on the bottom of the Weber, get it roaring hot, basically, and after the rest, we'll actually sear all sides of that joint. So you want to actually get good caramelisation on the outside of it. And once it's done, you've actually rested the meat already, so you're ready to carve. And again, spectacular cut. What you end up with reverse sear is wall-to-wall, with the way you want it cooked. So if you like it medium rare, it's top to bottom medium rare on the steak.
With no little grey.
No little grey bit on the side. When you cook direct, you actually get that sort of grey tinge to the edge of the meat, and you really don't get that with reverse sear.
Exactly.
When you're searing, Noel, like are you aiming for a temperature on the grates before you sear it? Like what? Because if we're going 275 for the reverse part, what are you aiming to get it up to?
So I would imagine it would be running at somewhere around 550, 600.
Yeah.
You know, that's a sort of typical searing temp. But basically, mate, as hot as you can get it. You know, light another chimney if you have to, pour it in. The searing part is probably the most important phase of that for taste, because you're caramelising the outside. And
it really doesn't take very long, does it, to sear the outside?
It really doesn't.
I'm normally quite, I used to be, till I learned how to do it properly, or didn't buy 1-inch thick steaks. I was always really worried I was just going to cook through the steak that I've just spent ages by leaving it on a sear for too long. But you don't need very long, do you?
No, you don't need very long. I mean, obviously the resting phase stops the cook, so the meat actually goes into decline and actually cools down quite a bit. So when you sear it, you're bringing that temperature back up and cooking it very slightly more. So once you've seared it all round, it'll probably land at around the 130, 135 internal, and that's pretty much a perfect medium rare.
And like a standing rib, right? It's a beautiful piece of meat. We did one on Christmas Day, just gone, and it's that crowd pleaser. It's an awesome bit of meat. It's a lovely taste, and it looks great on the table. But I think that can be quite daunting going in to buy one, right? Because you're like, normally you buy something like that, it's an occasion maybe, and you don't want to buy a bad bit of meat. But if you're going in to see the butcher, and I think most of us would say, go to see a butcher, don't not buy it from a grocery. But if you're going to buy a special bit of meat, go and get their advice and get a bit of. But what are you asking for? What are you looking for in the meat when it comes out? What are the kind of things that, if I'm going to do it for the first time, I want to be aware of?
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of different ways. So you have fresh standing rib roasts which haven't got much age on them, so they're slaughtered fairly recently compared to when you get them. And then obviously Aussie Butcher New Lynn has a aging locker there, so you can actually age your steaks in that locker. Typically when I look for a steak, I'm looking for really good marbling going through the entire meat. The marbling is basically melting fat, so it keeps everything moist. So if you look at the side profile of the meat, you want to be looking for nice sort of striations of fat going through them. Some people see that as a negative. It's not. It's an absolute positive. If you see that, it's probably a great piece of steak.
So with the standing rib roast, you obviously get the bones in it as well, right?
You do, yeah.
Is it like a bone per person for you? Like, is that, or one bone for two? Like, because it can be quite a big bit of meat.
Are we talking about Noel or?
Mate, it really depends on the size of the cow, to be honest. So we had a standing rib roast, which was Carrera Wagyu from Australia just recently, and each steak weighed 1.2 kilos after cooking.
Wow.
So you really, I mean, that's probably 4 normal people. I'd probably eat half of that in one sitting, you know. But yeah, it's
the
a big
basic
steak.
rule of thumb is about 300 grams of meat per person. It's actually a
But
really good portion.
You've probably got when you're doing tomahawk steaks or standing rib roast, you've got the bone to add to that as well. So it's probably more like 450. Will land you at the 300 mark for each person. So
yeah, it can be a really daunting piece of meat. I think the standing prime, and especially when you're used to cooking. If you're used to cooking just barbecue steaks or a bit of chicken here and there, you know, it's quite a big thing.
It is.
You know, sorry, I think it's something you may not notice getting into charcoal, but it's something that you might look at one day and think, wow, the pieces of meat that I'm cooking now are quite a lot bigger than what I cooked on the old gasser. You know, so I guess it's a path that you take, but you're not really aware of it. That now you're seeking bits of meat that are 1 kilo, 2 kilo, you know, and then the brisket's obviously 5+ kilos. Your whole approach to barbecuing just changes.
That's a good point. I often find myself inviting people round because I know I'm cooking a big bit of meat. Whereas before you might have cooked enough for just the family and gone, all right, we're just having a quick barbecue for the family. Now you're going, I need like 8 people to come around because I'm about to cook 6 kilos of meat here.
Yeah. I think it's a bit. I guess it's probably one of the sort of common misconceptions when you first start out cooking a brisket, for example. You end up cooking a very small brisket, and actually it's harder to keep moisture in a 1 kilo brisket than it is in a 10 kilo brisket. So my advice to you is just take the plunge, you know, maybe don't spend $300 on that first brisket, but get a big one.
Yeah.
It'll keep the moisture in. And you'll have a much better time doing it. My first brisket was awful, by the way.
I think everybody's first brisket awful. I panicked on mine, and I had 70 people coming to my house for my birthday.
You cooked a brisket.
Good time to do a brisket, mate.
I cooked a whole pig in a spit. So I had a gas spit, spit, and I just bought. I just got a drum smoker. And I said, I'm going to do brisket. And I ordered 2 6.5 kilo briskets.
Lucky at the
and then I decided just to cook one. And I did a number of things wrong that day, obviously. A number of things, including not tying the pig properly to the spit and having half of it fall off about 4 hours in. That I had to then rescue about an hour before anybody turned up. That was fun. But the other thing, I put a probe in it, because everybody says put a probe in it. So I put a probe in it. I had it hooked up to my digital thermometer, which was hooked up to my phone, and I watched it. I was watching this probe and watching the temperature, and I didn't know, because this is the first massive thing that I'd done, right? I watched the temperature skyrocket for the first hour and a half. And I didn't know about the stall, and I didn't know that the water was cooking out and that it would tail off, and I shit myself. I was like, oh my God, this thing it's going to be cooked in 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's a 6.5 kilo brisket. It's not going to be cooked in 2 hours, even at like 400 degrees. But I didn't know that.
We cooked 2 briskets at 450 degrees, didn't we, in 2 hours?
Oh, that's the story. Jesus, yeah.
I yanked this brisket out after 2 hours going, I'm going to have to take it off for a while. I'm going to have to take it off because otherwise it's going to be cooked and it's going to be like 6 hours before anybody turns up. So I took it off. I put it in the kitchen. I left it alone for about 3 hours, and then I put it back on the pit and tried to cook this thing. And when I took it was just leather. Like, it was leather when I took it off. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Worst thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
But complete newbie no idea what I was really doing, thought I was going to be the hero of my party, and everybody was very nice about it because it was my birthday. So, nobody kind of went, this is the worst thing I've ever put in my mouth, Alex. I knew it was, but they went, oh, the flavour's really good. And I think that's also, when you know that you've done bad barbecue, everybody goes, I really like the flavour. Yeah. Flavour's great. And they're like, you got another drink somewhere?
Yeah. My first brisket was about 1.5 kilos, basically. And it bounced off the deck. Didn't really know what I was doing. Cooking, temperature was bouncing between sort of 250 and 400 and sort of looked right. So I thought I'd take it off and, couldn't get a knife into it, couldn't get anything into it. But the beef cheeks came out all right, which is basically what kept me into barbecue and pushed me on. So
I think our top tips for all that, and actually I do have one more top tip, which is if you're going to cook a bigger bit of meat, whether it's a whole rib roast or brisket or whatever it is, one of the best things I've got for barbecuing, which I've just got, this has changed the way that I approach everything. I've got a vac pack machine.
Mate,
it's just brilliant. Just seal up
essential.
What's left over, chuck it in the freezer, and when you want it, you've got portion size, 20 minutes in a bit of hot water.
Bit of ragu, turn it into whatever you want.
Mate, I cooked a 9 kilo brisket last night. I think we ate about 9 slices, 10 slices maybe, and the rest of it got vat packed, and that's going to come out to play another day.
It's a game changer. Absolute game changer. Get a good vac packer. So
100%.
Vac packing, buy a big brisket, get your hands on Noel's big bit of meat. That's what he recommends.
Reverse sear, standing rib roast.
And reverse sear, standing rib roast.
Absolutely.
Sounds like a great intro into barbecue. So I'd advise you all get out of that. Look, I could sit here certainly chewing the fat and watching the coals die for a number of hours yet, but I think our friends at MediaWorks are about to kick us out of the studios. All the lights are off, and the security guard's looking a little bit anxious through the window, keeps tapping at me. So I think we've got to go. But what a great first episode. Thanks, Matt, for coming by and being such an awesome guest.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
On the first show. We really want your feedback. We want to know what you thought. We want to know what we missed, what we didn't do, and we can do on future episodes for you. So check us out. Give us a like, subscribe to the show, give us a comment, do whatever you can to help us make this what it should be for New Zealand barbecue. And we really hope you're going to see us again. Other ways to get hold of us, Noel, you can
so the easiest way is just go through the Meat Mafia Collective Facebook page, so feel free to DM us through that and we can answer any questions for you.
So share it, because pretty much MediaWorks has said if you don't get to a certain point here, we're never going to do this again. So we really need you guys to help us out. If you want a barbecue podcast, I don't know, come down and camp outside and do some kind of protest to make sure that they keep us going. That'll really help us out. But hit the like, hit the subscribe, download us, do all those kind of good things, and we'll see you next time.